welcome to Sarah's Korean Corner, where I look at all things related to Korean culture, from K-pop to K-dramas, food, language, and skincare. If those seem like things that are of interest to you, please subscribe. Okay, so today we are looking at episode 3 of Itaewon Class. Very exciting episode, many things happened, so let's get into it. It's the start of a new day at Danbam Pub. We've got the squad doing calisthenics, which is hilarious. The last review that I did, I mentioned at the end that we hadn't seen the girl from the very first episode who started the episode, Yi Seo. So basically, we get a whole episode that introduces us to Yi Seo. So very exciting because I was super confused and I was like, it's been 2 episodes, where is she? Here she is. So we have a scene with her in high school. And there are 2 or 3 girls bullying another girl. So again, the bullying is coming back. It's a common theme, I think, in a lot of K-dramas. And she's just casually observing, like not really watching them, but kind of listening. And as it escalates, it becomes obvious that she's taking video. We then see this really quick montage of all of her social media pull. And so it goes viral. People are condemning this girl who's the ringleader of the bullies. And that leads to a very interesting scene later that day of the girl's mother confronting Yi Seo. Now, from what I gather, in Korean culture, there is quite a hierarchy based on age. So if you are very old, you get the highest level of respect. There also are different respect levels depending on like your position in a company or various other things, but I'm just going to focus on age because I think that's sort of the dynamic that's at play here. So the mother of this teenage girl is obviously going to be older than Yi Seo. So she approaches Yi Seo, says to her, "Are you the person that posted this thing about my daughter?" Yi Seo says, "Yep, I did it. Your daughter's an ass, and clearly you don't know how to raise a child because she turned out like that because of you." So this woman slaps Yi Seo so hard. And she just sort of responds like, kind of like, okay, well, you know. And she turns to her accomplice behind her, who ends up being Geunsoo. And she says, "Did you get that?" And he's like, "Yep, I recorded it." And the mother is like, what is happening? Because she clearly is not aware of how social media works, which is unfortunate for her. And also her daughter, who seems like she should know better, but doesn't. And the mother is like, what are you doing? And so Yi Seo says, "You slapped me. I gotta do what I gotta do." And the mother just starts sort of going at her, talking about like, you know, how she doesn't respect her elders and sort of all this stuff. And then Yi Seo, who we get an introduction prior to this, like of a voiceover of Geunsoo, and he's basically going on about how amazing she is, and she's so smart, and she's so pretty, and she's really good at social media, and she's like really fashionable, like right, like all these positive things. And then he sort of ends by being like, she's also kind of a sociopath. So we pick up a little bit of that in this interaction because she's supposed to defer to this woman as a teenager, and this woman is obviously an ajuma, right? So she's an older married woman. She does not. So this woman goes in for another slap because she's so enraged by the lack of respect that she's receiving from this kid. And who's there to stop the second slap but our man Yi. So he grabs her hand mid-flight and he's like, whoa, 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 what's going on? What are y'all doing? While he's trying to figure out like who's in the wrong and like what's going on and how he can kind of fix the situation, Yi Seo slaps the mother with her full hand. Now I've watched a K-drama or 2. Slapping is just, it's so common. I mean, is there an episode that goes by really where like there's not somebody slapping somebody else? But I don't think I've seen a teenage child. I have not seen a child slap somebody's mom. And Yi is like, what? Like, he's stunned because this is not normal behavior. He catches up to Yi Seo and he says, you have to go back and apologize. And Yi Seo is like, and she looks at him and she says, that woman is responsible for my dad dying. And Seo-yi is like, because of course, he knows what that feels like. And so he kind of is taken aback and he's like, oh. And she looks at him and she rolls down the window and she's like, sucker, I'm kidding. And then they drive off and he's just like, and that's our introduction to Yi Seo. We are then transported to a scene back at good old Janga Corporation. Geunwon is trying to pitch an idea in front of his teammates. It's frankly not as weird as the idea that Soa was pitching before, but somehow everyone in the conference room is like appalled at what he's proposing, which is basically like a hookup club. They call it a hunting club. I guess that's like is that Konglish? I'm not sure. It's some kind of term that they've taken to describe single people going to places trying to pick up people to have sex with. But somehow, like, that idea is, like, too tacky and, like, offensive to everybody. And so Soa and Minjung is like, oh, this idea. And I'm sitting here like, weren't you just pitching an idea where you go to a club and you act like an asshole to people? Like, how is this? I guess it's different. I don't see how. I mean, I don't like Geunwon much as the next person, but, like, both of those ideas were garbage. So he's really, like, I think this is a great idea. Like, there are other kinds of clubs like this. Like, they've been super popular. Like, they're popping up, blah, blah, blah.
이따위 쓰레기 같은 기획입니다. 그러니 더더욱 적대는 안 돼. 오 실장.
예, 회장님.
이태원점은 당분간 자네가 관리해.
알겠습니다.
아버지, 용산지점은 제가...
Like, he gets a full, like, contact slap to the face in front of all his colleagues. He did a great job as an actor showcasing that, because he looked like he wanted to crawl into, under, through some kind of hole and not be in that room. As it seems like people at all levels and all ages seem to have trouble behaving themselves and keeping their hands off other people. I feel bad for him like this much. Like Geunwon. I feel like this much. His dad's not great. The understatement. His dad's terrible. Really a failure as a parent. But he also is now like a full adult and like there's therapy available. I mean, he could be doing things to not continue to be the kind of person that he is, and he's not doing that. So, I don't know. We'll see as the show goes on how I feel about him, but right now, nah. He and Soa kind of in the same spot. But anyway, back to Yi Seo, who's like my new favorite character. So she is at a bridge and she's contemplating life, mostly because she's just doing too many things, right? Like, she is the embodiment of the modern generation of people like overdoing, overworking, overstriving. She's exhausted, and so she posts something about her being at some bridge, and Geunsoo, poor muffin, clearly in love with her. She doesn't even notice him. Are they even friends? Doesn't really seem like they're even friends. It seems like he's just there, and when she's bored or she needs something, she calls him, and he's like more than happy to like show up, do stuff, buy things, be a doormat. So anyway, he's like stalking her, which, not cute. Somehow the show makes it seem like it's cute. It's like, oh, he like saw on her Instagram that like she's at this bridge, and so he's gonna go to, and I was like, she didn't ask you to come there, and also gross. But anyway, he rushes over to the bridge that she's at where she wants to be by herself. First, he's mostly just like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, fancy meeting you here. And then he was like, oh, I saw it on your Instagram. And she was just like, And so she asks him what he's up to. He says he's going to a club with a male friend of his. And so that immediately piques her interest because she's like, why would you go to a club? Huh, are you trying to pick up women? That's weird. And I'm sitting here like, he's a very attractive guy. Are we doing this? We pretending like he's hideous and like no girl would, okay, sure. And she's just like, cool, I'll come. And he's like, why would you do that to me? And I'm thinking, how funny, because he's gonna, like, here he is, attempting to pick up other women that he doesn't want to pick up because the only woman he's actually interested in is this girl, and she doesn't even, like, have the decency to not invite herself to, like, this thing that he's doing with his other friend. So I was just like, that's awkward. So he tries to protest. She's not having it and is like, let's go to this club. And he's just like, okay. It looks like it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't know if there's like a different sun in Korea. I doubt it. But it was like bright, like lunchtime bright. And they got on his scooter like they were going directly to this club. And I was like, does the club open at 3? Like, where y'all going exactly? So they're driving and she's got her arms around him to hold on, and he's like getting like a little thrill from the fact that she's touching him, and I'm like, it's mandatory touching though, sir. Like, she's not. So they're going along and this kid like drops his ball. The ball rolls into the street. He runs into the street to get the ball, and the scooter's like barreling down on him, and the mom is like screaming, and like Geunsoo is like and so he slams on his brakes on the scooter, and then we have what can only be described as an anime moment because Yi Seo, who is on the back of this scooter, goes topsy-turvy into the air, flips over the scooter, is basically on her way down to the concrete, and who's there but Yi? Now, I know what you're thinking, this episode is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in all the ways that K-dramas are ridiculous. I was loving it. And he's there wearing his new advertising bear suit that he like thinks is gonna get him like more customers. So he looks ridiculous. He's got like this like ridiculous like brown bear suit on his head. But it's a good thing that he has it because he sees Yi Seo and he's like, oh, there's a person in the air, and he goes running to try to catch the person, ends up getting underneath her before she can hit the ground. They both fall to the ground, and then he ends up banging his head on the ground, but she's okay. So Geunsoo is like, ah, he's like totally panicking. He runs to the kid and he's like, are you okay? And the kid is like, huh? And the mom is just like, ah. And then he runs to Yi Seo and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, oh my God. And she like headbutts him and she's like, you almost killed me. And she's like super pissed. No one's paying attention to Yi, who was on the ground, and he's sort of like, oh, kind of getting up, and his like flyers have gone all over the place that he's carrying. And they finally check on him and he's like, and she's like, and then he passes out. Next scene is him in the hospital. He wakes up. He's kind of like, oh, like, what's going on? They've had to cut his bear suit off of him so that they can treat him. He is basically negotiating with Geunsoo, and he's like, oh, you don't really need to do anything. It's fine. Just pay my hospital bill. And I'm sitting here like, the casualness with which that was agreed to, I was like, this is clearly not America, because in America, you just pay my medical bill, you will be going to court. Thousands of dollars would be involved in just like a simple visit to the emergency room. So I was sitting here trying to calculate, like, is this like a $20 visit? Like, why is this so, like, does Geunsoo have like $13,000 in his back pocket that he can just like throw out for something? Like, what are we doing? I pay more than whatever his hospital bill was just for like the chiropractor. So, they sort everything out. Yi basically is like, where's my bear head? And they're just like, oh, sorry, it got destroyed, and like we threw it away. And he was like, no, it was custom and it was really expensive, and like all this stuff. And like Yi Seo is looking at him like, and she just says to him, she's like, do you not understand how marketing works? Like, what are you even doing out there in a bear suit and some flyers? Like, that is so 50 years ago. No one advertises like that. Like, get a clue. And he's just like, huh. And so here he is post-concussion, like kind of like, oh, business plan, okay. So he's like, well, what should I do? And she's just like, obviously digital marketing. And he's like, huh? And she's just like, oh, eye roll, figure it out. So they leave, and before they can go, Seo-yi is like, whoa, wait, you said that you were really sorry about the accident. If you're really sorry, and gives them a flyer that she's just been making fun of. And he's like, come to my restaurant. Like, it's really good. You should try my restaurant. And they're just like, oh, okay. So in the hallway, Yi Seo is like staring at this flyer, and she's just like, ugh. And she like rips it into a bunch of pieces and throws it up, and it's just like, let's get to this club. I will spare you the recap of the club scene. It's not that interesting, honestly. We find out officially, as if we don't have eyeballs and ears, that Geunsoo, in fact, really likes Yi Seo. We find this out because his friend also really likes Yi Seo and is like, oh man, she really a high school student? Like, oh man. And then Geunsoo is like, wait, what are you doing? No, like, and he's like, well, I thought you weren't dating. And he's like, well, we're not. No, but I mean, like me, but no. And I'm just sitting there like. So anyway, his friend is not allowed to make a move on her because Geunsoo has some tinglies for good old Yi Seo. Won't tell her, won't actually make a move, but is also forbidden his friend from making a move, which I thought was like interesting guy code, but also like shoulder shrug. That's the club scene, dancing, confetti, music, blah. Afterwards, they're trying to go get a drink. Now, they're not old enough to get a drink, so Yi Seo has taken it upon herself to get them into one of these pubs so that they can have food and alcohol. She has a fake ID that makes her look like she's 50, which is hysterical to me. Like, who would let you in with this ID? Turns out, not very many places. So they go to Jeonga pub because it turns out that is one of her favorite pubs. And the guy at the front is kind of like, oh, I don't know. And Soa happens to be there that night and is like, hang on. And she looks at the ID and she's like, and Yi Seo is like, oh, it's because my plastic surgery. Like, I know I don't look the same, but like, you know. And so I was like, turns to Geunsoo and is like, y'all know each other really well? And they're like, and she's like, what's her name? And the name he gives doesn't match the name on the ID, which is like a rookie mistake. So she's like, bye, come back when you're old enough. And so they're out pouting and kind of stumbling about, and they happen to pass by Danbam pub. So Yi Seo is like, let's go to this place. And the guy, Geunsoo's friend, whatever his name, I mean, no one cares. But he's like, oh, I know a place. And like, she's like, no. We're gonna go here. And I'm thinking, do you remember that this is that guy's place? Or are you just like, I don't want to walk anymore and like, this seems like a good place? I think it's that she actually knows that this is Seo-yi's place, which pissed me off because I was like, y'all are underage. You should not be in this pub. They barely have any customers and are brand new, and he's helped you twice. But remember, she's a sociopath, so she doesn't seem to have any sense of like actual social decorum, even though she's fun and she's cute and like blah, but like when it actually comes to like being a decent person, she doesn't really have it in her. So I hadn't really picked that up when I was watching this episode. This scene was kind of the first scene where I was like, ooh, where's this going? I don't like this at all. So they go in, and Seo-yi is en route to pick up something. I don't exactly remember, but he's leaving, and so the only people in the shop are Hyuni, and Sungkwan. So they're both there, and Sungkwan looks at their ID, recognizes that they're fake. Like you can see on his face that he's like, ooh. But then he also was like, we don't have any customers though, and there are 3 of them, and like, So he lets them come in, they order soju, they order a bunch of other food. As they're sort of living it up and having a good old time, Geunsoo's friend. Now, we didn't get a very good introduction to him. We're watching him flirt with Yi Seo, and he's like, oh, like, give me your Instagram, and like, give me your phone. Like, he's trying to like get her number and like keep in contact, and like, Geunsoo is like, what's happening right now? Like, I swear I told you that I liked her, and I was like trying to work up the courage to like talk to her, but like, I already didn't like him because he just seemed kind of sleazy, and he starts talking to Sungkwan like a loser. Like, he basically refers to him as part-timer, Arbeiter. something like that, which is German. So it's interesting that they have like a German loan word for a part-timer. I'm not sure where that comes from. But, oh, sorry, this is me thinking in real time. I think it comes from the Japanese, which comes from the German. Look at that. Look at that. Anyway, it's not a good term used the way that this guy is using it. So usually just means like, hey, person that works not full time. In this context, he's using it like person who's not worth my respect. So it's really terrible. So he's talking to him in this really casual, low way. And Sung Kwan is kind of like, I'm just trying to get this paycheck and I am not going to snap on this guy, so I'm good. And Seo Yi, who's come back, is like, whoa, oh, hang on. I'm sorry, did you just refer to him? Like, when you need something, you can ring the bell and somebody will come over and they will bring you whatever it is that you need, but do not talk to my employees the way that you're talking to them. And his friend just loses it. I don't know what kind of like entitled, but anyway, he's like, I will talk to him like I want, blah, blah, blah. And he's like totally flipping out and he calls him like a bunch of other stuff and like repeats the same term, part-timer. And you can see Sung Kwan like kind of flip. And he's just like, and he goes at this guy. So the guy has been punched. He's basically knocked out. He's on the ground. They're trying to pull him off of the guy. It is not working. Geunsoo is like, oh my god, whoa, my friend is totally out of pocket. We're so sorry. We're gonna leave. Like, you know, his friend's like unconscious next to him. He's like, we're gonna go. I'm so sorry that this happened. Like, I had no idea that he was gonna act like this. He's drunk, blah, blah, blah. And Sung Kwan is just like, So he goes over and he gets a pot of boiling soup, I think. Some kind of boiling liquid, and he pours the liquid all over the guy's legs, and that like wakes him up, and he's like screaming, and Yi Seo is just sitting there kind of like enjoying it like it's a movie. So again, and at that point, he goes in to do additional damage, and all of a sudden we hear Hyunhee, and she's like, stop it. And that is the only thing that was able to get Sung Kwan to stop attacking this man. It was so strange because it was just like one voice and he just sort of froze. And she says to Seo Yi, I told you not to hire him. Like, he's an animal. Look at what he's like. Look at all this mess that he's created. There's like no reason for this. And then the police show up. And so the kid who's been causing all this trouble, right, the one who's been super disrespectful, is like, like, it's my fault, I'm so sorry. And he's like, already, and the police are just like, what the hell is going on in here? And so Seo Yi is like, we had a little bit of an altercation between one of my coworkers and a customer. And the guy is like, okay, we're not here for that. We'll talk about that later, but we're here because we got a report that there are underage drinkers here. And Seo Yi is like, well, that's not possible. We only have 3 customers. And then he sort of starts looking at the 3 of them, and he lands on Yi Seo, and she's like, and he's just like, cool. So they're at the police station. It's him, Yi Seo, Geunsoo, and Sung Kwan. And the police are talking to them about sort of the charges, like, this is what happens with underage drinking, this is what happens with your license. And Seo Yi is like, yep. And Sung Kwan's like, this is ridiculous. And he's like totally like going bananas. And Seo Yi is like, sir, did you really not know they were underage? And he was like, and he's like, exactly. So we're at fault. We let them in. It's our fault. We'll take the suspension. Just simmer down. And so Sung Kwan's like, but it's not your fault. And he's like, but I left you there and I didn't teach you properly. So kind of both of our faults, and I gotta take responsibility because I'm the owner. Who walks in but Geunwon? Turns out Geunwon is Geunsoo's older brother. They have no relationship. Geunsoo does not live at the same house, does not have any contact with his dad or his brother, basically has cut them off completely. But here he is, as the older brother, to bail out his younger brother for who knows what reason. I'm not even sure really what he's doing there. It's super weird. He and Seo Yi lock eyes, and it's like, oh, here we go, because they have not seen each other in, I think, the whole time he was in prison. What is that, 7 years? I think it's been 7 years since they've seen each other. So and him have like interacted a little bit here and there, but they have not seen each other. So they have like a whole altercation, and Geunwon says to the police officer in charge, oh, he's like a friend of mine, so like, let's just pretend like none of this happened. You can totally waive the charges, whatever. And the officer is like, oh, he's a friend of yours? Oh, I didn't know. Like, okay, like, let's just, and Seo-is like, what are you doing? And the guy's like, what do you mean, what am I doing? And he's like, what are you doing? And the police officer's like, well, if you're his friend, and he's like, is he like a president or something? Like, why are you taking his word and not following the letter of the law? And the police officer is like, huh? He says, he's not my friend, give me the suspension, and I'm leaving. And that's that. So he's super pissed that like Geunwon has any kind of pull at all, because he shouldn't. He's just like a random citizen. We can see from the scene that Jeonga Corporation has like broader reach than it had when he was in high school. So it had a lot even then. That whole town was afraid of that family, but now it's like extended to like parts of Seoul, which is ridiculous. He basically storms out of the police station, and it's at that moment that Yi Seo is kind of like, who is this person? So she goes running after him, and she says, look, this is all noble and everything. Don't you ever get tired of yourself? Like, your pub's gonna be shut down for 3 months. That 3 months means no income. When you come back, no one will remember that your pub existed. And so, like, this one time, just take the help, and then you can go back to being self-righteous. And he just looks at her and he says, okay, where does it stop? So if I do it one time, what's to stop me from doing it another time and another time? And he says to her, and this is my favorite line in this whole episode, he says, if you do something, I'm going to paraphrase it and probably get it wrong, but he basically says, like, if you add up a bunch of one times, like one-off things that you compromise on, you can change the whole direction of your life. And I was like, that is so true, because that is the definition of character. So it was very interesting, and she just kind of looked at him like, and then here comes Geunwon, because, he has to always be in everybody's business. So he comes out and he's like, blah, blah, like, this is the you that I know, like, you're so stupid and such a yokel. And while he's gloating, he basically says to him, like, I bet you, I know that you think that I'm responsible for your dad dying. And he leans in really close and he says, and you're right. And he's like taunting him like it's funny. And Yi Seo is like, huh? So this whole time she's been joking about her dad being killed by somebody, right? Like that's how she got away from Seo-yi the previous scene when she slapped that mom. But like now she's hearing that the reason why this interaction is happening is because in fact his dad has died, and the man in front of them is the reason that his dad has died. So she's kind of taken aback, and Seo-yi basically looks at Geunwon and he says, you know what? Keep talking. He's like, I made a really bad mistake many years ago. I'm not going to make that same mistake, but just know that I have a plan, and I've been counting the years, and the statute of limitations is going to run out, and when it does, I'm coming for you. And that's the end of the episode. How are you feeling about Yi Seo? Do you think that she and Geunsoo have any kind of future, or should he maybe move on to someone else? Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time. 안녕히 계세요. Bye.